Hello everyone and welcome back. We continue now with part 5 of our series on the tales from King Arthur and the Round Table, and all of those knights and damsels in between. If you're liking the series so far, then click the subscribe and the bell button. You'll know when I publish the next one. And no more introduction is needed. Let's get straight into it. Sir Gawain and the Maid with the Narrow Sleeves. Now that it happened that as Sir Gawain was riding one day through the country, he encountered a troop of knights, followed by a squire who led a Spanish charger, and about whose neck was hung a shield. Sir Gawain rode up to the squire and said, "Tell me, what is yonder troop that hath ridden by?" The squire answered, "Sir Meliance of Lys, a brave and hardy knight." "Is it to him that you belong?" Sir Gawain asked. "Nay, sir," said the squire, "my master is Theodoves, a knight as worthy as this one." "Theodoves, I know," said Gawain. "Whither he fareth? Tell me the truth." "He proceedeth to a tourney, sir. With this Meliance of Lys hath undertaken against Theobald of Tintagel. If you will take my advice, you will throw yourself into the castle and take part against the outsiders." "Was it not," cried Gawain, "in the house of Theobald of Meliance of Lys was nurtured?" "Ay, sir, so God save me," said the squire. "His father loved Theobald, and trusted him so much that on his deathbed he committed to his care his little son, whom Theobald cherished and protected, until the time when the youth petitioned his daughter to give him her love. But she replied that she would never do that until he should be made a knight. The youth being ardent, forthwith himself had been knighted, and then returned to the maiden. "Nay," answered the girl, "it shall never be until in my presence you have achieved such feats of arms that I know my love hath cost you somewhat. For those things which come suddenly not so sweet as those that we earn. If you wish, my love, take a tournament of my father. I desire to be certain that my love would be well placed in case I were to grant it." What she suggested, he performed, for love hath such lordship over lovers that those who are under his power would never dare to refuse whatever it pleased him to enjoin. "And you, sir, sluggish will you be if you do not enter the castle, for they will greet you greatly if you might help them." To which Sir Gawain answered, "Brother, go thy way. It would be wise of you, and let my affairs be." And so the squire departed, and Gawain rode towards Tintagel, for there was no other way by which he could pass. Now Theobald had summoned all his kith and kin who had come high and low, old and young, but he could not get the permission of his council to joust with his master, for the councillors feared lest he should utterly ruin their castle. Therefore the gates had been walled up with stones and mortar, leaving as the only approach one small postern, which had a gate made of copper, and as much as a cart could haul. Sir Gawain rode to it, behind the troop that bore his harness, for there was no other road within 7 leagues. He found the postern shut, and he turned into a close below the tower that was fenced with a palisade. He dismounted under an oak and hung up his shield. Thither came the folk from the castle, most of them sorry that the tourney had been abandoned. In the fortress was an aged noblewoman, great in land and lineage, whose word no one disputed. A long way off, the troop had been pointed out to him, and before they rode into the close, he went to Theobald and said, "Sir, so God save me, I have seen 2 companions of King Arthur, worthy men, who ride this way. I advise you to tourney with good hope, for we have brave knights and servants and archers who will slay their horses, and I am certain that they will joust before this gate. If their pride shall bring them, the gain will be ours, and theirs will be loss and the shame. As a result of this counsel, Theobald allowed those who wished to take their arms and sally forth. The knights were rightly glad, and their squires ran after their horses, while the dames and the damsels climbed high places to see the tourney. Below in the meadow they saw the arms of Sir Gawain, and at first thought there were 2 knights, because 2 shields hung from the tree. They cried out that they were fortunate to seize such 2 knights' arm. So some thought, but others exclaimed, "Fair Lord God, this knight hath arms and steeds sufficient for 2. If he hath no companion, what will he do with 2 shields? Never was seen a knight who carried 2 shields at the same time. It is very strange if one man means to bear 2 shields." While the ladies talked, and the knights went forth from the castle, the elder daughter of Theobald mounted to the tower, she on account of whom the tournament had been undertaken, and with her younger sister, whose sleeves were so quaint that she was called the Maid with narrow sleeves, for she wore them tight. Dames and damsels climbed the tower with them, and the tourney was joined in front of the castle. None bore himself so well as Meliance of Lys, by the testimony of his fair friend, who said to those about her, "Ladies, never did I see a knight who delighted me as doth Meliance of Lys. Is it not pleasurable to see such a knight? That man must have a good seat and be skilful in the use of lance and shield, who beareth himself so excellently." Thereupon her sister, who sat by her side, said that she saw a fairer knight. The elder maiden was angry and rose to strike her sister, but the ladies interfered and held her back, so that she missed her blow, which greatly incensed her. In the tournament many lances were shivered, shields pierced, and knights unhorsed, and it went hard that with the knight who met Sir Meliance of Lys, for there was none who would not throw on the hard ground. If his lance broke, he dealt great blows with his sword, and he bore himself better than any knight on either side, to the great joy of his fair friend, who could not resist exclaiming, "Ladies, it is wonderful! Behold the best bachelor knight of whom minstrel hath ever sung, or whom eyes have ever seen, the fairest and bravest of all those in the tourney." Then the little girl cried, "I see a handsomer one. 'Tis like a better." The elder sister grew hot. "Girl, you were a malapert when you were so unlucky as to blame one who I praised. Take that to teach you better another time." So saying, she slapped her sister so hard that she left the little girl's cheek a print of her 5 fingers. But the ladies who sat near scolded her and took her away. After that they fell to talking of Sir Gawain. One of the damsels said, "The knight bequeathed yonder tree. Why doth he delay to take arms?" A second damsel, who was ruder, exclaimed, "He hath sworn to keep the peace." And a third added, "He is a merchant. Don't tell me that he desireth to joust. He brings the horses to market." "He is a money changer," said the fourth. "The goods he hath he meaneth to sell to poor bachelors. Trust me, he hath money or raiment in those chests." "You have wicked tongues," cried the little girl, "and you are liars. Do you think a merchant would bear such huge lances? You tire me to death. talking such nonsense. By the faith that I owe the Holy Spirit, he seemeth to me a knight rather than a merchant or a money changer. He is a knight, and he looks like one." The ladies all cried with one voice, "Fair sweet friend, if he looketh so, it doth not follow that he is so. He putteth it on, because he wisheth to cheat the tariff. But in spite of all his cleverness, he is a fool, for he will be taken up and hung for a cheat." Sir Gawain heard all that the ladies had said about him, and he was ashamed and annoyed. But he thought, and thought rightly, that he lay under an accusation of treason, and that it was his duty to keep his pledge, or forever disgrace himself and his line. It was for this reason that he took no part in the tourney, lest, if he fought, he should be wounded or taken prisoner. Meliance of Lys called for great lances to strike harder blows until night fell upon the tourney, continued before the gate. The man who took any booty carried it to some place where he thought it would be safe. Then the ladies saw a squire, tall and strong, who held a piece of lance and bore on his neck a steel cap. One of the ladies, who was foolish, called to him, saying, "Sir Squire, so God help me, it is foolish of you to make prize of that tester those arms and croupies. If you do a squire's duty, you deserve a squire's wage. Below in yonder meadow is a man who hath riches he cannot defend. Unwise is he who misseth his gain, while he hath the power to take it. He seemeth the most debonair of knights, and yet he would not stir if one plucked his beard. If you are wise, take the armor and the treasure, none will hinder you." The squire went into the meadow and struck one of Gawain's horses, crying, "Vassal, are you sick that all day long you gape here and have done nothing? Neither pierced shield nor shivered lance." Sir Gawain answered, "Pray, what is it to you why I tarry? You shall know, but not now. Get you gone about your business." The squire withdrew, for Gawain was not the type of man whom he would dare say anything unpleasant. The tourney ended, after many knights had been killed and many horses captured. The outsiders had the best, and the people had all of the castle gained by intermission. At parting, they all agreed that on the morrow with songs they would meet again and continue the encounter. So, for that night, they separated, and those who had sallied forth returned to the castle, followed by Sir Gawain. At the gate, he met the nobleman who had advised his lord to engage in the tourney. This man accosted him pleasantly and said, "Fair sir, in this castle your hostel is ready. If it pleaseth you, remain here, for if you should go on it, it would be long before you arrived at lodging. Therefore I urge you to stay." "I will tarry, your mercy," said Gawain. "I have heard worse words." The man led the guest to his house, talking of this and that, and asked him why on the day he had not borne arms. Sir Gawain explained that he had been accused of treason, and was bound to be upon his guard against prison and wounds until he could free himself from the reproach that was cast upon him. For it would be to dishonor of himself and his friends if he should fail to appear at the time appointed. The noblewoman praised him, and said that if it was the reason, he had done right. With that, he led Sir Gawain to his house, where they dismounted. The people of the castle blamed him, wondering how his lord would take it, while the elder daughter of Theobald did her best to make trouble for Gawain, on account of her sister, with whom she was angry. "Sir," she said to her father, "on this day you have suffered no loss. but made a gain greater than you think. You have only to go and take it. The man who hath bought it here will not dare to defend it, for he is wily. Lances and shields he bringeth, with palfreys and chargers, and maketh himself resemble a knight to cheat the customs, so that he may pass free when he cometh to sell his wares. Render him his deserts. He is with Gawain, son of Bertan, who hath taken him to lodge at his house. I just saw him pass. Theobald took his horse, for he himself wished to go there. The little girl who saw him leave went out secretly by a black gate, and straight down the hill to the house of Gawain, who had fair daughters. When we saw their little lady, they should have been glad, and they were. Each took her by a hand, and led her into the house, kissing her eyes and lips. In the meantime, Gawain and his son Herman had left the house, and were going to the castle to speak to their lord. Midway there they met Theobald and saluted him. He asked whither Gawain was going, and said that he had intended to pay him a visit. "By my faith," said the nobleman, "that will not displease me, and at my house you shall see the fairest of knights." "It is even he whom I seek," said Theobald, "to arrest him. He is a merchant who selleth horses, and pretendeth to be a knight." "Alas," said Gawain, "'tis a churlish speech I hear you make. I am your man, and you are my master. But on the spot I renounce your homage, and in the name of all my life now defy you, rather than suffer you my disgrace of the house." "Indeed," answered Theobald, "I have no wish to do any such thing. Neither you nor your house shall ever receive aught but honour from me, not but what I have been counselled so to proceed." "Your great mercy," explained the nobleman. "It will be my honour if you visit as my guest." So, side by side, they went on until they reached the house. When Sir Gawain saw them, he rose out of courtesy and said, "Welcome." The two saluted him and took their seats beside him. Then the nobleman, who was the lord of that country, asked why he had taken no part in the tourney, and Gawain narrated how a knight had accused him of treason, and how he was only on his way to defend himself in a royal court. "Doubtless," said the lord, "that is a sufficient excuse. But where is the battle to be held?" "Sir, before the king of Camelot, whither I am journeying." "And I," said the nobleman, "will guide you, since you must needs pass through a poor country, and I will provide you with the food and pack beast to carry it." Gawain answered that he had no need to accept anything, for it could be bought. He would have food and lodging wherever he want. With these words, Theobald took leave. As he departed, from the opposite direction he saw come his little daughter, who embraced Gawain's leg and said, "Fair sir, listen, I have come to complain of my sister who hath beaten me. So, please, do me justice." Gawain made no answer, for he did not know what she meant. He put his hand on her head, and when the girl pulled him, saying, "To you, fair sir, I complain of my sister. I do not love her, since today she hath done me great shame for your sake." "Fair one, what have I to do with that? How can I do justice against your sister?" Theobald, who had taken leave, heard his child's entreaty and said, "Girl, who bade you come here and complain to this knight?" Gawain asked, "Fair sweet sir, is this maid your daughter?" "Aye, but never mind what she says, a girl is a silly creature." "Certes," said Gawain, "I should be churlish if I did not do what she desires. Tell me, my sweet child and fair, in what manner can I justify against your sister? If it pleaseth you, for love of me, bear arms in the tourney." "Tell me, dear friend," said Gawain, "have you ever before made petition to any knight?" "No, sir." Never mind her, explained the father. Pay no heed to her folly. Sir Gawain answered, Sir, so aid me the Lord God, for so little a girl, she hath spoken so very well. I will not refuse her. Tomorrow, if she wishes, I will be her champion. Your mercy, fair sweet sir, cried the child, who was overjoyed and bowed down to her feet. Without more words they parted. Theobald carried his daughter back on the neck of his palfrey, and as they rode up the hill, he asked what the quarrel had been about, and she told him the story from beginning to end, saying, Sir, I was vexed with my sister, who declared that Meliance of Lys was the best of all knights. And I, who had seen this knight in the meadow, could not help saying that I'd seen a fairer, whereupon my sister called me a silly girl and beat me. Fie on me, if I take it from her. I would cut off both my braids close to my head, which would be a great loss, if tomorrow the tourney this night would conquer Meliance of Lys, and to put an end to the fuss of Madam, my sister. She talks so much that she tired all the ladies, but a little rain will hush a great wind. Fair child, said the father, I command and allow you in courtesy to send him some love token, a sleeve or a wimple. The child, who was simple, answered, With pleasure, since you bid me, but my sleeves are so small, I should not like to send them. Most likely, he would not care for them. Daughter, say no more, said Theobald. I will think about it. I am very glad. So saying, he took her in his arms, and had a great joy of embracing her, until he came in front of his palace. But when his elder daughter saw him approach with the child before him, she was vexed, and exclaimed, Sir, whence cometh my sister? The maid in the narrow sleeve. She is full of her tricks. She hath been quick about it. Where did you find her? And you, he answered, what is it to you? Quiet, for she is better than you are. You pulled her hair and you beat her, which grieves me. You acted rudely, you were discourteous. When she heard her father's rebuke, the maid was greatly abashed. Theobald had brought from his chest a piece of red samite, and he bade his people to cut out and make a sleeve wide and long. Then he called his daughter and said, Child, tomorrow rise betimes and visit the knight before he leaveth his hostel. For love's sake, you will give him this new sleeve, which he will wear in the tourney when he goeth thither. The girl answered that so soon as she ever saw the clear dawn she would dress herself and go, with that her father went his way, while she, in great glee, charged her companions that they should not let her oversleep, but should wake her when day breaks, if they would have her love them. They did as she wished, and when it dawned, caused her to wake and dress. All alone she went to the house where Sir Gawain lodged, but early though it was, the knights had risen and gone to the monastery to hear mass. She waited until they offered long orisons, and listened to their service, as much as was right. When they returned, the child rose to greet Sir Gawain, and cried, Sir, on this day may God save and honour you. For love me, wear the sleeve which I carry in my hand. With pleasure, he answered, Friend, your mercy. After the knights were not slow to take arms, and came pouring out of the town, while the damsels went up against the walls and the dames came to the castle to see the troops of brave and hardy knights approach. They rode with loose rein, and in front was Meliance of Lys, who went so fast that he left the rest in the rear 2 rods and more. When his maiden saw her friend, she could not keep quiet, but cried, Ladies, yonder comes the man who hath the lordship of chivalry. As swiftly as his horse would carry him, Sir Gawain charged Meliance of Lys, who did not evade the blow, but met it boldly, and shivered his lance. On his part, Sir Gawain smote so hard that he grieved Meliance, who flung on the field. The steed grasped by the rein and gave to a varlet, bidding him to take the lady on whose account he had entered the tourney, and say that his master had sent her the first spoil he had made that day. The youth took the charger, saddled as it was, and led it towards the girl who was sitting at the window in the tower, whence she had watched the joust. And when she saw the encounter, she cried to her sister, "Sister, there lies Meliance of Lys, whom you praised so highly. A wise man ought to give praise where it is due. You see, I was right yesterday when I said that I saw a better knight." Thus she teased her sister, who grew angry and cried, "Child, hold your tongue. If you say another word, I will slap you so that you do not have a foot to stand on." "Oh, sister," answered the little girl, "remember God. You ought not to beat me, because I told you the truth. I saw him tumble as well as you. I think he will not be able to get up. Be as cross as you like. I must say that there is not a lady here who did not see him fall flat on the ground." Her sister would have struck her, had she been able to, but the ladies around would not allow it. With that came the squire, who held the rein in his hand. He saw the girl sitting at the window and presented the steed. She thanked him 100 times, and bade the steed to be taken in charge. The squire returned to tell his master, who seemed the lord for the tournament, that there was no knight so gallant that he did not cast from the saddle. If he reached him with the lance, that is. On the day he captured 4 steeds. The first he sent to the little girl, the second to the wife of the nobleman who had been so kind, and the third and fourth to his own daughters. The tourney was over, and the knights entered the city. On both sides the honour belonged to Sir Gawain. It was not yet noon when he returned from the encounter. The city was full of knights, who ran after him, asking who he was and of what land. At the gate of his hostel he was met by the damsel, who did naught but grasp his stirrup, salute him, and cry, "1,000 mercies, sweet sir." He responded frankly, "Friend, before I am recreant to your service, may I be aged and bold. I shall never be so remote, but a message will bring me. If I know your need, I shall come at the first summons, whatever business be mine." While they talked, her father came and wished Sir Gawain to stay with him for that night, but first he begged that if his guest pleased, he would tell his name. Sir Gawain answered, "Sir, I am called Gawain. My name was never concealed, nor have I ever told it before it hath been asked." When Theobald knew that the knight was Sir Gawain, his heart was full of joy. "Sir, be pleased to lodge with me and accept my service. Hitherto I have done you little worship, and never did I set eyes upon a knight whom I longed to honour." In spite of urging, Sir Gawain refused to stay. The little girl, who was so good and clever, clasped his foot and kissed it, commending him to God. Sir Gawain asked why she had done that, and the little girl said that she had kissed his foot in order to remember her wherever he went. He had answered, "Doubt it not, fair sweet friend. I shall never forget you, after I have parted hence." And with that, Sir Gawain took leave of his host and others, who one and all commended him to God. That night he slept in an abbey, and had all that was necessary. The Adventures of Sir Lancelot. Then at the following Pentecost, who was held a feast at the Round Table of Caerleon with high splendour, all the knights thereof resorted to the court, and held many games and jousts, and therein Sir Lancelot increased in fame and worship among all men, for he overthrew all the newcomers, and was never unhorsed or worsted, save by treason or enchantment. When Queen Guinevere had seen his wondrous feats, she held him in great favour, and smiled more upon him than any other knight. And ever since he had first gone to bring her to King Arthur, Sir Lancelot thought on her as the fairest of all ladies, and done his best to win her grace. So the queen often sent for him, and bade him tell of his birth and strange adventure, how he was only the son of King Ban of Brittany, and how one night his father, with his mother Helen and himself, fled from the burning castle. How his father, groaning deeply, fell to the ground and died of grief and wounds, and how his mother, running to her husband, left him all alone. How as she thus lay wailing came the Lady of the Lake, took him in her arms, and went with him into the midst of the waters, where with his cousins, Lionel and Bors, he had been cherished all his childhood, until he came to King Arthur's court, and how this was the reason why men called him Lancelot of the Lake. Anon it was ordained by King Arthur that in every year at Pentecost there should be held a festival of all the knights of the Round Table at Camelot, or such other place as he should choose, and at those festivals he should be told publicly the most famous adventures of any knight during the past year. So when Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere rejoiced to hear this, his wanderings and adventures, he resolved to set forth yet again, to win more worship still, that he might more increase her favour. Then he bade his cousin, Sir Lionel, make ready, for, said he, we too will seek adventure. So they mounted their horses, armed at all points, and rode into a vast forest. And when they had passed through it, they came to a great plain. And the weather being very hot about noontide, Sir Lancelot greatly longed to sleep. Then Sir Lionel espied a great apple tree standing by a hedge, and said, Brother, yonder is a fair shadow, where we may rest ourselves and horses. I am full glad of it, said Lancelot. For all these 7 years I have not been so sleepy. So they alighted there, and tied their horses up to sundry trees, and Sir Lionel walked and watched, while Sir Lancelot fell asleep, and slept passing fast. In the meanwhile came 3 knights, riding as fast as flying as they ever could ride, and after them followed a single knight. But when Sir Lionel looked at them, he thought he had never seen so great and strong a man, or so well furnished and apparelled. Anon he saw him overtake the last of those who fled, and smite him to the ground. Then he came to the second, and smote him such a stroke that the horse and man went down to the earth. Then he rode he to the third likewise, and struck him off his horse more than a spear's length. With that he lighted from his horse, and bound all 3 knights fast with the reins of their own bridles. When Sir Lionel saw this, he thought the time was come to prove himself against him. So quietly and cautiously, lest he should wake Sir Lancelot, he took his horse and mounted and rode after him. Presently overtaking, he cried aloud for him to turn, which instantly he did, and smote Sir Lionel so hard that the horse and man went down forthwith. Then he took up Sir Lionel, and threw him bound over his own horseback, and so he served the 3 other knights, and rode them away to his castle. There they were disarmed, stripped, and beaten with thorns, and afterwards thrust into a deep prison, where many more knights also made great moans and lamentations, saying, Alas, alas, there is no man that can help us but Sir Lancelot, for no other knight can match this tyrant Turquine, our conqueror. But all this while Sir Lancelot lay sleeping soundly under the apple tree, and as it chanced, there passed that way 4 queens of high estate, riding upon 4 white mules, under 4 canopies of green silk borne on spears to keep them from the sun. As they rode thus, they heard a great horse grimly neigh, and turning them about soon saw a sleeping knight that lay there, all armed, under an apple tree. And when they saw his face, they knew it was Sir Lancelot of the Lake. Then they began to strive which one of them should have the care of him. But Queen Morgan le Fay, King Arthur's half-sister, the great sorceress, was one of them, and said, "We need not strive for him. I have enchanted him, so that for 6 hours or more he shall not awake. Let us take him to my castle. When he awakes, himself shall choose which one of us he would rather serve." And so Sir Lancelot was laid upon his shield, and borne on horseback between 2 knights to the castle, and there laid in a cold chamber till the spell should pass. Anon they sent him a fair damsel bearing his supper, who asked him, "What cheer?" "I cannot tell, fair damsel," said he, "for I know not how I came to this castle, if it were not by enchantment." "Sir," she said, "be of good heart, and tomorrow at the dawn of day you shall know more." And so she left him alone, and there he lay all night. In the morning early came the 4 queens to him, passing richly dressed, and said, "Sir Knight, thou must understand that thou art our prisoner, and that we know thee well for the King Ban's son, Sir Lancelot of the Lake. And though we know full well that there is only one lady in the world who may have thy love, and she Queen Guinevere, King Arthur's wife, yet now we are resolved to have thee to serve one of us. Choose, therefore, of us 4 which thou wilt serve. I am Queen Morgan le Fay, Queen of the land of Gore, and here also is Queen of North Gales, and Queen of Eastland, and Queen of the Out Isles. Choose then at once, for else thou shalt abide here in this prison till thy death." "Oh, it is a hard case," said Sir Lancelot, "that either I must die or choose one of you for my mistress. Yet I'd rather die in prison than serve any living creature against my will. So take this for my answer, I will serve none of you, for ye be false enchantresses. And as for my lady, Queen Guinevere, whom so lightly ye have spoken of, were I at liberty, I would prove it upon you, or upon yours, that she is the truest lady living to her lord the king." "Well," said the queen, "is that your answer, that you refuse us all?" "Yea, on my life," said Lancelot, "refused ye be of me." And so they departed from him in great wrath, and left him sorrowfully grieving in his dungeon. At noon the damsel came to him and brought him his dinner, and asked him as before, "What cheer?" "Truly, fair damsel," said Lancelot, "in all my life never so ill." "Sir," she replied, "I grieve to see ye so. But if ye do as I advise, I can help you out of this distress, and will do so if you promise me a boon." "Fair damsel," said Lancelot, "right willingly will I grant it thee, for sorely do I dread these 4 witch queens, who have destroyed and slain many a good knight with their enchantments." Then said the damsel, "Sir, wilt thou promise me to help my father on next Tuesday, for he hath a tournament with the King of North Gales, and last Tuesday lost the field through 3 knights of King Arthur's court who came against him. And if next Tuesday thou wilt aid him, tomorrow before daylight, by the grace of God, I will deliver thee." "Fair maiden," said Lancelot, "tell me thy father's name, and I will answer thee." "My father is King Bagdemagus," she said. "I know him well," replied Sir Lancelot, "for a noble king and a good knight, and by the faith of my body I will do him all the service I am able to on that day." "Gramercy to thee, Sir Knight," said the damsel. "Tomorrow, when thou art delivered from this place, ride 10 miles hence to an abbey of white monks, and there abide until I bring my father to thee." "So be it," said Lancelot, "as I am a true knight." And so she departed, and on the morrow early came again and led him out the 12 gates, differently locked, and brought him to his armour. And when he was well armed, she brought him to his horse also, and lightly he saddled it, took a great spear in hand, and mounted and rode forth, saying as he went, "Fair damsel, I shall not fail thee by the grace of God." And all the day he rode in a great forest, and he could find no highway, and spent the night in the wood. But the next morning found his road, and came to the abbey of the white monks. And there he saw King Bagdemagus and his daughter waiting for him. So that when they were together in a chamber, Sir Lancelot told the king how he had been betrayed by an enchantment, and how his brother Lionel was gone, he knew not where, and how the damsel had delivered him from the castle of Queen Morgan le Fay. "Wherefore, while I live," said he, "I shall do service to herself and all her kindred." "Then I am sure of thy aid," said the king. "On Tuesday now next coming?" "Yea, sir, I shall not fail thee," said Lancelot. "But what knights were they last week who defeated thee, and took part with the King of Northgales?" "Sir Mador de la Porte, Sir Mordred, and Sir Galatine," replied the king. "Sir," said Lancelot, "as I understand, the tournament shall take place but 3 miles from this abbey. Send them to me here, 3 knights of thine, the best thou hast, and let them all have plain white shields, so as I also will. Then we will come suddenly into the mist between both parties, and fall upon thy enemies, and grieve them all we can. None will know who we are." So on the Tuesday, Sir Lancelot and the 3 knights lodged themselves in a small grove hard by the lists. Then came into the field the King of Northgales, with 160 helms, and 3 knights of King Arthur's court who stood apart by themselves. And when the King Bagdemagus had arrived with 80 helms, both companies set their spears in rest, and came together with a mighty clash, wherein were slain 12 knights of King Bagdemagus, and 6 of the King of Northgales, and the party of Bagdemagus was driven back. With that came Sir Lancelot, and thrust into the thickest of the press, and smote down with one spear 5 knights, and broke the backs of 4, and cast down the King of Northgales, and broke his thigh by the fall. When the 3 knights of Arthur's court saw this, they rode at Sir Lancelot, and each after the other attacked him, but he overthrew them all, and smote them nigh to death. Then, taking a new spear, he bore down to the ground 16 more knights, and hurt them all so sorely that they could not carry arms no more that day. And when his spear at length was broken, he took yet another, and smote down 12 knights more, the most of whom he wounded mortally, till in the end of the party of the King of Northgales would joust no more, and the victory was cried to King Bagdemagus. Then Sir Lancelot rode forth with King Bagdemagus to his castle, and there he feasted with great cheer and welcome, and received many royal gifts, and on the morrow he took leave and went to find his brother Lionel. Anon by chance he came to the same forest where the 4 queens had found him sleeping, and there he met a damsel riding on a white palfrey. When they had saluted each other, Sir Lancelot said, Fair damsel, knowest thou where any adventurers may be had in this country? Sir knight, said she, there are adventures great enough close by if thou darest prove them. Why should I not, said Lancelot, since that is the cause for which I came here. Sir, said the damsel, hard by this place there dwelleth a knight that cannot be defeated by any man. So great and perilously strong he is. His name is Sir Turquine, and in the prisons of his castle lie 80 knights and 4, mostly from King Arthur's court, whom he hath taken with his own hands. But promise me, ere thou undertakest this deliverance, to go and help me afterwards, and free me and many other ladies that are distressed by a false knight. Bring me to this felon Turquine, cried Sir Lancelot, and I will afterwards fulfill all of your wishes. And so the damsel went before, and brought him to a ford, and a tree whereupon a great brass basin hung. And Sir Lancelot beat with his spear end upon the basin long and hard, until he beat the bottom out of it, but he saw nothing. He then rode to and fro before the castle gates for well nigh half an hour, and anon saw a great knight riding from the distance, driving a horse before him, across which hung an armed man bound. And when they came near, Sir Lancelot knew the prisoner for a knight of the Round Table. By that time the great knight who drove the prisoner saw Sir Lancelot, and each of them began to settle his spear and to make ready. Fair sir, then said Sir Lancelot, put off that wounded knight, I pray thee, from his horse, and let him rest, while thou and I shall prove our strength upon one another. For as I am told, thou doest and hast done great shame and injury to the knights of the Round Table, wherefore I warn thee now, defend thyself. If thou mayest be of the Round Table, answered Turquine, I defy thee and all thy fellows. Sir Lancelot replied, that is saying overmuch. Then setting their lances in rest, they spurred their horses toward each other as fast as they could, and smote so fearfully upon each other's shields that both their horses' backs broke beneath them. As soon as they could clear their saddles, they took their shields before them, and drew their swords, and came together eagerly, fought with great and many grievous strokes, and soon they had both many grim and fearful wounds, and bled in streams. Thus they fought 2 hours and more, thrusting and smiting at each other wherever they could hit. Anon they were both breathless, and stood leaning on their swords. Now, comrade, said Sir Turquine, let us wait a while, and answer me what I shall ask thee. Say on, said Lancelot. Thou art, said Turquine, the best man I ever met, and seems like one that I hate above all other knights that live. But if thou be not he, I shall make peace with thee, and for sake of thy great valor will deliver all 80 prisoners, and 4 who lie within my dungeons, and thou and I will be companions for evermore. Tell me then thy name. Thou sayest well, replied Sir Lancelot, but who is he that thou hatest so much above others? His name, said Turquine, is Lancelot of the Lake, and he slew my brother Sir Carados at the Dolorous Tower, wherefore if I shall ever meet him, one of us 2 shall slay the other, and thereto I have sworn by a great oath. And to discover and destroy him I have slain 100 knights, and crippled utterly as many more, and many have died in my prisons, and now, as I have told thee, I have many more therein, who shall be delivered if thou tell me thy name, and it not be Sir Lancelot. Well, said Lancelot. I am that knight, son of King Ban of Benwick, and knight of the Round Table. So now I defy thee to do thy best. Aha, said Turquine with a shout. Is it then so at last? Thou art more welcome to my sword than ever knight or lady was to feast. For never shall we part till one of us be dead. Then did they hurtle together like two wild beasts, slashing and lashing with their shields and swords, and sometimes falling both on the ground. For 2 more hours they fought on, and at last Sir Turquine grew very faint and gave a little back, and bare his shield full low for weariness. When Sir Lancelot saw him thus, he leaped upon him fiercely as a lion, and took him by the crest of his helmet, and dragged him to his knees. Taking off his helmet, he smote his neck asunder. Then he arose, and went to the damsel who had brought him to Sir Turquine, and said, I am ready, fair lady, to go with thee upon thy service, but I have no horse. Fair sir, she said, take ye this horse of the wounded knight whom Turquine had just now carried to his prison, and send that knight on to deliver all the prisoners. So Sir Lancelot went to the knight, and prayed for him for loan of the horse. Fair lord, said he, you are right welcome, for today ye have saved both me and my horse, and I see that ye are the best knight in the world. For in my sight ye shall have slain the mightiest man, and the best knight except thyself I ever saw. Sir, said Sir Lancelot, I thank thee well. And now go into yonder castle, where thou shalt find many noble knights of the Round Table. For I have seen their shields hung on the trees around. On yonder tree alone there are Sir Keys, Sir Brandles, Sir Marhaus, and many more, and I pray you greet them all for me, Sir Lancelot of the Lake, and tell them that I bid them help themselves to any treasures they can find within the castle. So as they went, the damsel told them, Sir, we are now near the place where the foul knight haunteth, who robbeth and distress all ladies and gentlewomen travelling past this way, against whom I have sought your aid. Then they arranged that she should ride on foremost, and Sir Lancelot should follow under cover of the trees by the roadside. And if he saw her come to any mishap, he shall ride forth and deal with him that troubled her. And as the damsel rode on at a soft ambling pace, a knight and page burst forth from the roadside, and forced the damsel from her horse, until she cried out for help. And then came Sir Lancelot, rushing through the wood, as fast as he might fly, and all the branches of the trees cracked and waved around him. O false knight and traitor to all knighthood, he shouted, who taught thee to distress the fair ladies thus? The foul knight answered not, but drew out his sword and rode at Sir Lancelot, who threw his spear away and drew his own sword likewise, and struck him such a mighty blow as clove his head down to the throat. Now hast thou wages thou long hast earned, he said, and he departed from the damsel. Then 2 days he rode in a great forest, and he had scantly food or lodging, and on the 3rd day he rode over a long bridge, when suddenly there started up a passing foul churl, and smote his horse across the nose, so that he started and turned back, rearing with pain. Why ridest thou over here without my leave? Said he. Why should I not? Said Lancelot. There is no other way to ride. Thou shalt not pass by here, cried out the churl, and dashed at him with a great club full of iron spikes. Sir Lancelot was fain to draw his sword and smite him dead upon the earth. At the end of the bridge was a fair village, and all the people came and cried, Ah, sir, a worse deed for thyself thou never did, for thou hast slain the chief porter of the castle yonder. But he let them talk as they pleased, and rode straight forward to the castle. There he alighted, tied his horse to a ring in the wall, and going in saw a wide green court, and thought it seemed some noble place to fight in. And as he looked about, he saw many people watching him from doors and windows, making signs of warning, and saying, "Fair knight, thou art unhappy." In the next moment came upon him two great giants, well armed save their heads, and two horrible clubs in their hands. Then he put his shield before him, and with it warded off one giant's stroke, and clove the other one with his sword from the head downward to the chest. When he first saw the giant, that he ran away mad with fear, but Sir Lancelot ran after him, and smote him through the shoulder, and shore him down his back so he fell dead. Then he walked onward to the castle hall, and saw a band of 60 ladies and young damsels coming forth, who knelt to him and thanked him for their freedom. "For, sir," they said, "the most of us have been prisoners here these 7 years, and have been kept up at all manner of work to earn our meat and food, though we all be great gentlewomen born. Blessed be the time that thou wast born, for never did a knight a deed of greater worship than thou hast this day. And thereto we will bear witness in all times and places. Tell us therefore, noble knight, thy name and court, so that we may tell our friends." And when they heard it, they all cried it loud, "Well may it be so, that we know that no knight save thou should ever overcome those giants, and many a long day have we sighed for thee, for the giants feared no other name among all knights but thine." Then he told them to take the treasures of the castle as a reward for their grievances, and to return to their homes, and so rode away in many strange and wild countries. And at last, after many days, by chance he came near the night time to a fair mansion, wherein he found an old gentlewoman, who gave him and his horse good cheer. And when bedtime had come, his host brought him to the chamber over a gate, and there he unarmed went to bed and fell asleep. But soon thereafter came riding in great haste and knocking vehemently at the gate below, which when Sir Lancelot heard, he rose and looked out the window, and by the moonlight saw 3 knights come riding fiercely after one man, lashing on him all at once with their swords, while the one knight nobly fought them all. Then Sir Lancelot quickly armed himself, and getting through the window, let himself down by a sheet into the midst of them, crying out, "Turn ye on me, you cowards, and leave fighting with that knight." Then they all left Sir Kay, for the first knight was he, and began to fall upon Sir Lancelot furiously. And when Sir Kay would have come forward to assist him, Sir Lancelot refused, and cried, "Leave me alone to deal with them." And presently with 6 great strokes he befelled them all. Then he cried out, "Sir Knight," then they cried out rather, "Sir Knight, we yield us unto thee, as to a man of might." "I will not take to your yielding," said he. "Yield ye to Sir Kay, or I will have your lives." "Fair knight," they said, "excuse us in that thing, for we have chased Sir Kay thus far, and should have overcome him but for thee." "Well," said Sir Lancelot, "do as ye will, for ye may live or die, but if ye live, ye shall be holden to Sir Kay." And then they yielded to him, and Sir Lancelot commanded them to go unto King Arthur's court at the next Pentecost, and say Sir Kay had sent them prisoners to Queen Guinevere, and this they swore to do upon their swords. Then Sir Lancelot knocked at the gate with his sword hilt, till his hostess came and let him in again, and Sir Kay also, And when the light came, Sir Kay knew Sir Lancelot, and knelt and thanked him for his courtesy and gentleness and kindness. "Sir," he said, "I have done no more than what I ought to do, and ye are very welcome. Therefore let us now take rest." So when Sir Kay had supped, they went to sleep, and Sir Lancelot and he slept in the same bed. On the morrow Sir Lancelot rose early, and Sir Kay's shield and armour set forth. When Sir Kay arose, he found that Sir Lancelot's armour by his bedside, and his own arms were gone. "Now, by my faith," said he, "I know that he will grieve some knights of our king's court, for those who meet him will be bold to joust with him, mistaking him for me, while I, dressed in his shield and armour, shall surely ride in peace." Then Sir Lancelot, dressed in the clothing of Sir Kay, rode long in a great forest, and came at last to a low country full of rivers and fair meadows, whereupon he saw a bridge before him, and 3 silk tents of diverse colours, and to each tent was hung a white shield, and by each shield stood a knight. So Sir Lancelot went by without speaking a word. And when he had passed, the 3 knights said it was the proud Sir Kay, who thinketh no knight equal to himself, although the contrary is full often proved upon him. "By my faith," said one of them, named Gaunter, "I will ride after and attack him for all his pride, and ye shall watch my speed." Then taking shield and spear, he mounted and rode after Sir Lancelot, and cried, "Abide, proud knight, and turn, for thou shalt not pass free." And so Sir Lancelot turned, and each one put his spear in rest, and came all his might against the other. And Sir Gaunter's spear broke shot, but Sir Lancelot smote him down, both horse and man. When the other knights saw this, they said, "Yonder is not Sir Kay, but a bigger man." "I dare wager my head," said Sir Gilmer, "yonder knight have slain Sir Kay and taken his horse and harness." "Be it so, or not," said Sir Raynaud, the 3rd brother. "Let us go now to our brother Gaunter's rescue. We shall have enough to not match that knight, for by his stature I believe it is Sir Lancelot or Sir Tristram." Anon they took their horses and galloped after Sir Lancelot, and Sir Gilmer first assailed him, but was smitten down forthwith, and lay stunned upon the earth. Then said Sir Raynaud, "Sir Knight, thou art a strong man, and I believe hast slain my 2 brothers, wherefore my heart is sore against thee. Yet, if I might honour, I would avoid thee. Nevertheless that cannot be, so keep thyself." And so they hurtled together with all their might, and each man shivered his spear to pieces. And they drew their swords and lashed out eagerly. And as they fought, Sir Gaunter and Sir Gilmer presently arose and mounted once again, and came down at full tilt upon Sir Lancelot. But when he saw them coming, he put forth all his strength, and struck Sir Raynaud off his horse. When the 2 other strokes, he served the others likewise. Anon Sir Raynaud crept along the ground, with his head all bloody, and came towards Sir Lancelot. "It is enough," said Lancelot. "I was not far from thee when thou wast made knight, Sir Raynaud, and I know thee for a good and valiant man, and was full loth to slay." "Gramercy for thy gentleness," said Sir Raynaud. "I and my brethren will straightway yield to thee when we know thy name, for well we know that you are not Sir Kay." "As for that," said Sir Lancelot, "be it as it may, but ye shall yield to Queen Guinevere at the next feast of Pentecost as prisoners, and say that Sir Kay sent ye." Then they swore to him it should be done as he commanded, and so Sir Lancelot passed on, and the three brethren helped each other's wounds as best they might. Then rode Lancelot forward into the deep forest, and came upon 4 knights of King Arthur's court under an oak tree, Sir Sagramore, Ector, Gawain, and Owain. And when they spied him, they thought it was Sir Kay. Now by my faith, said Sir Sagramore, I will prove Sir Kay's might. And taking his spear, he rode towards Lancelot. But Sir Lancelot was aware of him, and setting his spear in rest, smote him so sorely that horse and man fell to the earth. Lo, cried Sir Ector, I see by the buffet that knight had given our fellow he is stronger than Sir Kay. Now I will try what I can against him. So Sir Ector took his spear and galloped at Sir Lancelot. And Sir Lancelot met him as he came, so smote him through shield and shoulder, so that he fell, but his own spear was not broken. By my faith, cried Sir Owain, yonder is a strong knight, and must have slain Sir Kay and taken his armour. By his strength, I see it will be hard to match him. So saying, he rode towards Sir Lancelot, who met him halfway and struck him so fiercely that at one blow he overthrew him also. Now, said Sir Gawain, will I encounter him? So he took a good spear in his hand and guarded himself with his shield, and he and Sir Lancelot rode against each other, with their horses at full speed furiously smiting on the middle of their shields. But Sir Gawain's spear broke short asunder, and Sir Lancelot charged so mightily upon him that his horse and he both fell and rolled upon the ground. Ah, said Sir Lancelot, smiling as he rode away from the 4 knights, heaven give joy to him who has made this spear, for never held I a better one in my hand. But the 4 knights said to each other, truly, one spear hath felled us all. I dare lay my life, said Sir Gawain, it is Sir Lancelot. I know him by his riding. So they all departed for the court. And as Sir Lancelot still rode in the forest, he saw a black bloodhound running with its head toward the ground as if it tracked a deer, and following after it, he came to a great pool of blood. But the hound, ever and anon looking behind, ran through a great marsh and over a bridge toward the old manor house. So Sir Lancelot followed and went into the hall. He saw a dead knight laying there, whose wounds the hound licked, and a lady stood behind him, weeping and wringing her hands, crying, O knight, too great is the sorrow which thou hast brought me. Why say ye so? Replied Sir Lancelot. I have never harmed this knight. I am fully aggrieved to see thy sorrow. Nay, sir, said the lady, I see it is not thou hast slain my husband, for he truly did that deed, is deeply wounded, and shall never recover. What is thy husband's name? Asked Sir Lancelot. His name was Sir Gilbert, one of the best knights in the world, but I know not the name who has slain him. God send thee comfort, said Sir Lancelot, and departed again into the forest. And as he rode, he met with a damsel who knew him and cried out, Well found, my lord, I pray ye of your knighthood, help my brother, who is sore wounded and ceases not to bleed, for he fought this day with Sir Gilbert and slew him, but was himself well nigh slain. And there is a sorceress who dwelleth in a castle hard by, and she this day told me that my brother's wound shall never be made whole, until I find a knight to go into the Chapel Perilous, and bring from thence a sword and a bloody cloth in which the wounded knight was wrapped. This is a marvellous thing, said Sir Lancelot, but what is your brother's name? She replied, Sir Melio de Logres. "He is a fellow of the Round Table," said Lancelot. "Truly I'll do my best to help him." "Then, sir," she said, "follow this way, and it will bring ye to the Chapel Perilous. I will abide here till God send ye hither again, for if ye speed not, there is no living knight that may achieve that adventure." And so Sir Lancelot departed, and when he came to the Chapel Perilous, he alighted and tied his horse to the gate. As soon as he was within the churchyard, he saw on front of the chapel many shields of knights who he had known, turned upside down. Then he saw in the pathway 30 knights taller than any men he had ever seen, all armed in black armor, with their swords drawn, and they gnashed their teeth as he came. But he put his shield before him, and took his sword in hand, ready to do battle with them. And when he would have cut his way through them, they scattered on every side and let him pass. Then he went into the chapel, and saw therein no light but of a dim burning lamp. Then he was aware of a corpse in the midst of the chapel, covered with a silken cloth, and so stooped down to cut off a piece of it, whereat the earth beneath him trembled. And then he saw a sword lying by the dead knight, and taking it in his hand, he hid him from the chapel. As soon as he was in the churchyard again, all 30 knights cried out with fierce voices, "Sir Lancelot, lay that sword from thee, or you will die." "Whether I live or die," said he, "ye shall fight for it ere ye take it from me." With that they yielded and let him pass. And further on beyond the chapel he met a fair damsel who said, "Sir Lancelot, leave the sword behind, or you will die." "I will not leave it," said Lancelot, "for any asking." "Then, gentle knight," said the damsel, "I pray thee kiss me once." "Nay," said Sir Lancelot, "that God forbid." "Alas," she cried, "I have lost all my labour, but hadst thou kissed me, my life's days would all be done." "Heaven save me from these subtle crafts," said Sir Lancelot, and therewith took his horse and galloped forth. And when he was departed, the damsel sorrowed greatly, and died within 15 days. Her name was Elois, the sorceress. Then came Sir Lancelot to Sir Meliot's sister, who, when she saw him, clapped her hands and wept for joy, and took him to the castle hard by, where Sir Meliot was. And when Sir Lancelot saw him, he knew him. He was pale as ashes for loss of blood. And as Sir Melot, when he saw Sir Lancelot, kneeled and cried aloud, "O Lord, Sir Lancelot, help me!" And thereupon Sir Lancelot went to him and touched his wounds with the sword, and wiped them with the piece of bloody cloth. And immediately he was whole, as though he had been never wounded. Then there was great joy between him and Sir Meliot, and his sister made sure Sir Lancelot had good cheer. So upon the morrow he took his leave, that he might go to King Arthur's court. For, he said, it draweth nigh to the feast of Pentecost, and there by God's grace shall ye then find me. And riding through many strange countries, he came at length before a castle. And he passed by, and heard 2 bells ringing. Looking up, soaring a falcon flying ahead, with bells tied to her feet, and long strings dangling from them. And as the falcon flew past an elm tree, the strings caught in the boughs, that she could not fly any further. In the meantime came a lady from the castle, and cried, "O Sir Lancelot, as thou art the flower of all knights in the world, help me get my hawk, for she had slipped away from me and be lost. If my lord husband is so hasty, he will surely slay me." "What is thy lord's name?" "His name," she said, "is Sir Felot, a knight of the King of Northgales." "Fair lady," said Sir Lancelot, Since you know my name and require me on my knighthood to help you rather, I will do what I can to get your hawk." And thereupon alighting, he tied his horse to the same tree, and prayed the lady to unarm him. So when he was unarmed, he climbed up and reached the falcon, and drew it to the lady. Then suddenly came down, out of the wood, her husband, Sir Lancelot, all armed with a drawn sword in his hand, and said, "O Sir Lancelot, now I have found thee as I would have thee," and stood at the trunk of the tree to slay him. "Ah, lady," cried Sir Lancelot, "why have you betrayed me?" "She has done as I commanded her," said Sir Lancelot, "and thine hour is come that thou must die." "It were a shame," said Sir Lancelot, "for an armed to slay an unarmed man." "Thou hast no other favour from me," said Sir Lancelot. "Alas," cried Lancelot, "that every knight should die weaponless." And looking overhead, he saw a great bough with leaves, and wrenched it off the tree and suddenly leapt down. Then Sir Lancelot struck at him eagerly, thinking to have slain him. But Lancelot put the stroke down with the bough, and therewith smote him on the side of the head, till he fell swooning to the ground. And tearing at his sword from his hands, he shore his neck through the body. Then did the lady shriek dismally, and swooned as though she would die. But Sir Lancelot put on his armour, and with haste took his horse and departed thence, thanking God he had escaped that peril. And as he rode through a valley, among many wild lands, he saw a knight with a drawn sword, chasing a lady to slay her. And seeing Sir Lancelot, she cried and prayed to him to come and rescue her. At that he went up, saying, "Fie on that knight! Why wilt thou slay this lady? Thou dost shame to thyself and all knights." "What hast thou done between me and my wife?" replied the knight. "I will slay in spite of thee." "Thou shalt not harm her," said Lancelot, "till we have first fought together." "Sir," answered the knight, "thou doest ill, for this lady hath betrayed me." "He speaketh falsely," said the lady, "for he is jealous of me without cause." "As I shall answer before heaven. But as thou art named the most worshipful knight in the world, I pray thee of thy true knighthood to save me, for he is without mercy." "Be of good cheer," said Lancelot, "I shall not lie within his power to harm thee." "Sir," said the knight, "I will be ruled as ye will have me." So Sir Lancelot rode between the knight and the lady, and when they had ridden a while, a knight cried out suddenly to Sir Lancelot to turn and see what men they were who came riding after them. And while Sir Lancelot, thinking not of treason, turned to look, the knight, with one great stroke, smote off the lady's head. Then was Sir Lancelot passing wroth, and cried, "Thou traitor! Thou hast shamed me forever." And alighting from his horse, he drew his sword to have slain him instantly, but the knight fell upon the ground and clasped Sir Lancelot's knees, crying for mercy. "Thou shameful knight," answered Lancelot, "thou mayst have no mercy, for thou showest none. Therefore arise and fight with me." "Nay," said the knight, "I will not rise till thou dost grant me mercy." "Now I will deal fairly by thee," said Sir Lancelot. "I will unarm me to thy shirt, and I have my sword only in my hand. Only if thou canst slay me shalt thou be acquit forever." "That I will never do," said the knight. "Then," said Sir Lancelot, "take this lady and the head, and bear it with thee, and swear me upon thy sword to never rest until thou comest to Queen Guinevere." "That will I do," he said. "Now," said Sir Lancelot, "tell me thy name." "Pedivere," answered the knight. "In a shameful hour wert thou born." So Sir Pedivere departed, bearing with him the dead lady and her head. And when he came to Winchester, where the Queen was with King Arthur, he told them all the truth, and afterwards did great and heavy penance many years, and became a hermit. So 2 days before the feast of Pentecost, Sir Lancelot returned to the court, and King Arthur was full glad of his coming. When Sir Gawain, Sir Ewain, Sir Sagramore, and Ector saw him in Sir Kay's armour, they knew well it was he who had smitten them down with one spear. Anon came all the knights Sir Turquine had taken prisoners, and gave worship and honour to Sir Lancelot. Then Sir Kay told the king how Sir Lancelot had rescued him when he was in near danger of his death. And, said Sir Kay, he made the knights yield, not to himself, but me. And by heaven, because Sir Lancelot took my armour and left me his, I rode in peace, and no man would or do any harm to me. Then came the knights who fought with Sir Lancelot at the Long Bridge, and yielded themselves also to Sir Kay, so that he said nay, he had not fought with them. It is Lancelot that overcame you. Next came Sir Meliot de Logres, and told the king Arthur how Sir Lancelot had saved him from death. And so Sir Lancelot's deeds and great adventures were made known, how the 4 sorceress queens had him in prison, how he was delivered by the daughter of King Bagdemagus, and what deeds of arms he did at the tournament between the King of North Wales and King Bagdemagus. And so, at that festival, Sir Lancelot had the greatest name of any knight in all the world, and by high and low he was the most honoured of all men. Well, there you have it, the end of this installment. I hope you're enjoying it so far. I'd like to thank my top-tier supporters, both on Patreon and YouTube, and I'd like to thank everybody who's bought the merchandise, especially the mugs too. That's certainly appreciated. So let me thank Dark, Kerry, Kimberly, Ember, Ben, Britt, Charles, Aaron, James, Jeffrey, Melissa, Scott, Stark Factory, Wendy, Jaden, Sherry, Jessica, Christine, Sally, Katiana, Christine, Fazabo, Legitimus, Maverick, Susan, Dr. Neuro Nerd, Cameron, Alexander, Nicholas, Daniel, JR, Charlene, and Christopher. Once more, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next installment. Good night, everybody. Lots of love to you all.